Storytelling is something that is innately human. Since the beginning of time, humans have always chosen stories as the medium to pass down information, whether it's around the campfire, on cave paintings, or any modern fiction. Stories have helped humanity understand the world. But somewhere along the way, we decided that serious information needs to be passed down in a serious manner. We need textbooks and bullet points and lists, and especially in the world of business, every business textbook seems to follow the same format, where it's some foreword from some dude in Silicon Valley that nobody really knows, followed up by a couple real world examples, followed up by more lists and more bullet points and more breakdowns. But that's not how humans learn. And I don't know if you've noticed, but most business books taught at the university level are boring. And you read it, might be good while you read it, but that information doesn't stick with you. And today I want to talk about a book that breaks that mold. It does something kind of radical for a business book, and it tells a straight up fictional narrative, and it sticks to that narrative for the entire series. So let's go ahead and get into that. Hi, my name is Caden, and today I want to talk about All In Startup by Diana Kander. I'm reading this as a part of a course at Syracuse University. It's an entrepreneurial course, so it goes very hand in hand with what the book talks about. And this book I kind of assigned to us as our, what we would say, textbook, even though it does not follow that, regular format that we're used to seeing. Instead, this book follows the character of Owen, who is a struggling entrepreneur who sort of lucks his way into playing at the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, which is where he inevitably meets up with Sam, who is a businesswoman who has started multiple entrepreneurial ventures. And the story just follows both their mentee and mentor relationship as long as the through line of the World Series of Poker tournament. Yeah, this novel does a great job of telling a story, but still establishing those entrepreneurial, values and takeaways and insights that are super important for someone starting a new business. And so, yeah, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little walk through the points that the book makes, going to go over kind of an overview of the plot, and then I want to break down why this is so successful and hammering home the lessons and the takeaways and the insights from Diana Kander, who is a successful entrepreneur herself and someone who has talked with thousands of entrepreneurs through her work as a venture capitalist. So at the beginning, we're introduced to Owen, who, like I said before, main character. And at the start, Owen is described as, he was kind of killing it at his old job. He was a consultant and he was rocking that job. So he decided, I'm going to start my own venture because I'm so good, and he fails. And really hammers home the point at the beginning that his marriage is in shambles, business is struggling, and overall he's having a terrible time. And his company, Rebicycle, basically resells used bikes at a cheaper cost, and it's an online store. And he's getting a big fat goose egg in sales. And this is when he meets Sam at the poker tournament. They start to hit it off. Owen's company running out of money, he's running out of time, and he's still stuck in the cycle of oh, I'm doing so good because I'm getting so many views on my website, but I'm not getting any sales. Basically, he has his head up his ass. He doesn't really know his left from his rights in the entrepreneurship world, and that's what Sam kind of shows him. Sam essentially, hits Owen with the hard hitting facts of you didn't set up a good enough solution for your company to solve. You're wasting your time on all the website and the rebranding and marketing gimmicks, and you don't have a good foundation. So it doesn't matter what kind of nice windowsills you put up if your foundation is shit. Owen doesn't want to hear any of this. He's super upset about it because this is his baby. He dropped out of his cushy office job to do this, and he doesn't want to hear that he's failing, but he is, and that's the reality. So yeah, then this kind of goes. Owen has this own little mental struggles with this, and he's riding his bike, crashes, and sort of comes to the realization of hey, this is real. I got to start learning. I got to want to learn from someone who's clearly better than me at this. So this is sort of where the novel takes a turn, where it's like, all right, Owen, pulls himself up by his bootstraps. And he's like, all right, let me get to work. Let me learn where I'm going wrong. Basically, he shuts up, starts listening, uses the resource that's in front of him, which is, extremely lucky resource that he runs into like a multi-millionaire successful entrepreneur who just like happens to like want to hang out with him for the entire book, but whatever, that's besides the point. Sam really starts, drilling into his head of what the problems are with his business, and she advises him to go out into the real world, talk to some real customers, talk to some real people who don't even have to be customers, just talk to people in the industry and learn, soak up all that information, like just be a sponge, because, clearly things aren't going right. So you gotta take everything into account and get away from all those baseless assumptions that you made in the beginning. So this is when he starts going to bike stores. He starts meeting, managers of stores, customers, and he just chats with them, and he starts to realize that the assumption he made that people wanted to buy cheap bikes was overshadowed by the fact that, they didn't, the price tag to them doesn't equate to the quality. And also no one wants to buy bikes online because you got to test them. So 2 for Owen there. Yeah, so this is when sort of the detective work comes in, and after, he keeps advancing in the tournament and Sam gets knocked out, whatever. And he ends up meeting with this urban planner who is also playing in the tournament, who also got knocked out. And he starts to like sort of find a real problem, but then he also jumps the gun again, where he's like, "Oh, this is the end all be all," because he's just like too ramped up and too in his own head. Like they hammered home in poker terms, but he was on tilt and he didn't quite realize it. So Sam again advises him to take a step back, do all of the detective work, do all of the interviews before you jump on and leash on to another venture that may or may not solve your issues. Yeah, I also think that it's important that the book shows that he doesn't like just like luck into some. I mean, obviously he lucks into meeting an urban planner, whatever. He cares a lot about bikes, but he doesn't. It's because he was asking questions and because he was asking, the right questions and those open-ended questions that he got to a place where he could then find a solution to a problem that the customers were having. And it doesn't stop with just that one person. He has to go out and talk to all these other urban planners from other cities. And then to bring it home, his ideas progressing. He's doing more interviews. He's starting to like work things out with the business back home. And he, at the same time, he's progressing farther and farther into the poker tournament. So, life's good. He's riding on high. And they keep slipping in these analogies between poker and business and how, you can treat them as kind of a similar idea. But yeah, basically he starts succeeding. He's got, this great advice from this great mentor, and, things are starting to look on the bright side. And then it sort of concludes with him following through with his mission and continuing to do the work that will actually lead to a successful entrepreneurial venture. Just to point out 4 the main points that, they obviously, like, I read this book today, as I'm filming this today on the due date. Also not important. Don't acknowledge that. So the 4 key points that the book establishes. Number 1, startups are about customers, not about building products. The customer is the most important part of however you model your business. For example, with Rebicycle, it was all focused on the product of, it's cheap, it's high quality, you can buy it online, so you can ship, like it can ship to you anywhere. But he fails to realize that, nobody wants it, so it's kind of worthless. Number 2, people don't buy services, they buy solutions to their problems. This is one that gets hammered home hard in the book. Um, it doesn't matter how good your product is or how cool and innovative it is. If it doesn't solve a problem, people simply won't spend money on it. It is that plain and simple. And it takes a while. It is like it's an easy concept, but it's hard to get it. It's easy to get it misconstrued also, because you can focus on this really fancy thing, and you think it solves what you think is a problem, but it might be such a small problem that still no one cares to buy it. And then again, you're left with something that is pointless. It doesn't actually do anything impactful for anybody. The third point that this book drives home is that entrepreneurs have to be detectives. You're not some fortune teller who has their hand on the glass ball, and they know what way the world is going. It's all about talking to people, and really, really searching hard for a problem. Like getting in depth, getting into the weeds of whatever industry you're talking about, and it's interviewing people, it's looking at statistics, it's comparing and contrasting what different current companies do to find where your venture might fit in and like the grand scheme of things. If you don't figure out the model first, then the website and the branding and all that stuff is, you know, you're putting the cart before the horse, if that makes sense. The fourth takeaway is that entrepreneurs are, you know, luck makers, not a risk taker, which is, the usual idea of an entrepreneur is someone who risks it all and, somehow manages it. But really, by doing all the work that we've previously talked about, you're minimizing your risk. You're making it so unlikely that you would fail, but you still do like need a little bit of luck. There's a part where Owen's in a hand of poker, and he made a good call. He went for the gut shot, and on the flop he was just straight beat, and there's nothing he could do about it. But because he had put himself in a good place where he had to take that chance, he got a little bit lucky. He went runner runner, and won the hand. Um, which, like, I have no poker lingo, but like I suck so bad at poker, it's not funny. I refuse to play, and I've begun dealing my friends' games because I cannot lose any more money. So, time to wrap this thing up. I think this book works extremely well because by weaving the information into a story, you get to already play out in your mind and visualize how those decisions are actually made and how those takeaways are actually applied. And you get to see someone fuck it up, which I don't think isn't really talked about enough in textbooks, because there's so many ways to do things wrong, and there's also a lot of ways to do things right. But you can read those takeaways off a bullet point list, or you can hear them from me, but you don't get to see the little mess ups along the way, and then already in your brain, oh, it's one more wrong way or one more wrong thing to avoid in the future. And by doing that and telling it as a story, having the conflict of messing up, figuring out a little bit, messing up again, figuring out a little bit, you're already like a leg up and understanding and applying those themes than someone who just read off a textbook. So, to wrap things up, um, I really enjoyed this. I read this book in one sitting this morning, because this project is inevitably due at midnight. And, you know, because it was so attention grabbing, I was able to read it in one sitting, which, if this was a textbook and I had to read it in one sitting, I would have wanted to kill myself. So that really two big thumbs up from Diana Kander for Diana Kander on that one, because that would have made last night suck a lot worse. And yeah, I really really enjoyed this, and I think this book actually it's an interesting window into what the future of textbooks could be, because in the age of attention and the age of TikTok and Instagram Reels, where everything is battling so hard for attention. So having a textbook also grab your attention in a meaningful way is critical, because the amount of times that I've read a textbook and pick up my phone and start scrolling because I was so bored, like that happened countless times. With this, it really didn't happen because I kind of got locked into the story and like wanted to see what was happening, which is rare for a textbook to do. I literally can't think of any other book I had to read for a class that really did that the way that this one does, and it still relays the information, which is critical. So I think that this this medium of getting information to students or anybody who wants to learn, I think it has like a lot of potential. I really do. I think that you know it you don't have to be a great writer to write like this. Which, like, no shot to, no offense to Diana, but like it's not written in this elegant prose and with like deep thematic undertones. I don't know. I think it's a bright. It kind of shows that there's a bright future um, for relaying information in a world where everybody is vying for your attention. Every app, every creator, whatever. It's good to see that like education, intellectual stuff can still compete in that market for attention. So yeah, this was my take on All in Startup by Diana Kander. Um, yeah, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it to anybody who is interested in learning about entrepreneurship. So cool. Take care.